We're back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. On the phone, Washington Bureau Chief of the Huffington Post, Ryan Grimm. He is in Cleveland as we speak. Ryan, what's happening with the protests outside of the convention hall? Anything?
Not much. I mean, the stories about Chicago '68 being repeated are going to need corrections so far. There's still a lot of talk that, well, maybe at some point over this week there's going to be a lot. The protests are going to really heat up. I don't see how that happens. I don't know why. If you were planning on coming to Cleveland, you're not already here.
Right.
I think this is kind of it.
What about the concerns? And do you think or have you seen any of open carry groups? B, do you think that frankly people were a little nervous about there being open carry groups there?
Yeah, I haven't seen much of it. I mean, I haven't. I weirdly just am seeing Dennis Kucinich walk past. He's not protesting though. He's wearing a suit, and he is not openly carrying. Maybe concealed, but not openly. No, I mean, I haven't seen a lot of that either. I heard a lot of that too. There's going to be your Second Amendment crew. There's going to be the new Black Panthers, and there's going to be the cops. The cops are certainly openly carrying, and they're out in intimidating force. But none of the other stuff is really coming to fruition.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about last night. Where were you when this whole plagiarism thing started to break? Because I'm curious as to what was the sense in the convention hall or wherever you were out and about as to how the first night had gone, and then talk about how it sort of that perspective changed once it became clear that Melania Trump was reading off of at least partially Michelle Obama's speech from 8 years ago.
I was at the CNN grill, which is that's where I was watching the speeches. It's the most delightful thing you've ever seen, and it's absurd. I don't know why CNN does it. They basically rent an entire bar and restaurant, and everything in it is free. It's like your communist utopia.
Wait, do you have to be media for that, or how do you get in there?
Yeah, you have to be kind of in the media, but where are their competitors? I'm sitting there wondering why a waiter is coming up to me and giving me beers and feeding me on CNN's dime. It makes no sense, but that's where I was, and it was rippling through there. Once it became clear that she had plagiarized it, and plagiarism is one thing. It's kind of funny. The fact that it was Michelle Obama is
right.
What just really just made it land with such a bam. So yeah, it was pretty immediate. As soon as that guy out in San Diego in the Starbucks, noticed it, people started putting the clips together, and the next 24 hours are gone.
Well, wait, what were people saying about the convention beforehand? Because I mean, I saw some of the we were doing our live coverage, but we were just basically watching C-SPAN, and there were times where I found Rudy Giuliani seemed to be off his meds or sort of slipping into another era of his life. There were other times when the 13 Hours guys were up there where I was like, this is about as much of a disaster as you could want at the sort of peak prime time to have these guys riffing for 35 minutes. And people in the audience looked like they were the full 13 hours were going to be played out. And so I'm curious, but afterwards I saw the commentary, and most of the sort of the establishment figures were saying stuff like, this was fantastic. And then, the plagiarism, but what was the sense on the ground of people, or at least in the press, that you got from how people were ingesting the first night before, pre-plagiarism?
Well, our reporters who were in the arena were saying that it was stunningly empty. Like when Joni Ernst was was up on stage, it was maybe like 1/5 full. So it's like just waves of empty seats. And Donald Trump, famously at his rallies demands that the camera people pan around and, show the massive crowd that's there to adore him. That massive crowd was not in the arena. I'm sure they'll be there Thursday for his speech, but it definitely reflects a lot of ambivalence that is present here.
Right. And what was your sense? I mean, did you didn't watch any of the speeches, did you? You were just in the CNN grill partying, weren't you? I mean, if you're going to get in trouble by saying that, don't say it. But
what was that?
I was suggesting that even though Huffington Post has sent you out there, that you didn't actually watch any of the convention. You were just at the CNN grill. But if you would if you'd rather not say that on it,
that's what I'm going to do next time.
You're just going to go to the grill.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Give me your sense of this. Like, it seems to me that the press, for the most part, right? I mean, Huffington Post is obviously different. I mean, you guys have a sort of an addendum on every piece that you write about Trump, that he's a liar and et cetera, et cetera. But in the main, and I guess I'm talking mostly cable news, it seems to me like they can't muster up the will or the energy to say, like, wow, almost all of this was about race. It was just a little bit more submerged than Trump usually makes it. And a lot of it was about sort of triggering, this sort of some type of latent fear in Americans about stuff that they really shouldn't be worried about. They don't seem to be able to bring themselves to talk about that. But when you talk about process, which, theoretically you could drop, someone who has no interest in American politics whatsoever down into, parachute them in, they can look at the plagiarism, and that becomes sort of the big disqualifier.
Yeah, I think it becomes hard for reporters when people put on a tie and they get up in front of a podium and they address thousands of people, and it gets broadcast, and there's the fancy background. It feels real, and it feels like something that is serious and needs to be treated with seriousness, and serious things are not racist things, by the media's understanding of our political culture. And so it's just very hard to peel it back and say, wow, this is just a bunch of 1972 race baiting going on here.
Right.
It's just, and the other problem is that it's not new. They've been doing it now for a couple of months, whereas the plagiarism is new. And also hilarious. So they're like, oh, we're on that.
So wait, so what are the different theories that you're hearing about what happened, right? I mean, because if it was, I just noticed there was a story that they were pointing out, they were saying that, well, a couple of months ago, a guy named, I think it was Brian Scully, was contracted to write the first draft. And as soon as I heard that, that just reminded me of the time that my dad found a joint in my house, when he was away, and I blamed it on Jimmy Sullivan, who was, of course, a fictional character, who I said, like, I barely know that guy, and I'm never going to let him back in the house. I mean, the idea of this, like, Brian Scully sounds almost identical to that. But what do you think? I mean, what are you hearing? What are people speculating as to how that happened?
I'll tell you, I mean, either it was deliberate and there's some self-sabotage, which is, given the vipers in the Trump campaign, that you cannot completely rule that out. But I think I know how it happened. I think whoever was writing the speech went and found the addresses of the wives of candidates like Romney and McCain and Obama, and put them all into a Google Doc or a Word doc, read through them to get ideas for crafting Melania's speech. And you got to be careful with those documents, because you forget which paragraphs of pablum are yours and which paragraphs of pablum have been used before. And if you don't have a good system in place, you're going to make a mistake. The way that other campaigns deal with this is that they check stuff. They run it through software, or they have other people look at it. And so, but the Trump campaign is extremely lean, as you could say. So they don't have anybody looking over the person's shoulder. So I think that's what happened. It was like a Google Doc paragraph that kind of got just, over a series of drafts that just kind of seeps its way into your own writing, and there it is.
And why haven't they found that person and fired them? Do you think it's A, someone that they can't fire, or B, they don't want to show any weakness because, after all, they could just go out there and just say, well, we don't know what you're talking about anyways?
Yeah, you're right. It shows weakness. It accepts responsibility when their line right now is that they didn't do anything wrong. Twilight Sparkle uses the word dream. So what if Melania also used it? Other possibility is that it was Jared Kushner, maybe, who helped write it. You can't fire your your son-in-law. Now, he and Melania don't speak, really, so maybe, it doesn't mean they couldn't have written a speech for her. Maybe Corey Lewandowski wrote it, just as a favor to Melania, because they get along well. You can't fire somebody you've already fired. So I think there's a bunch of different possibilities.
Wait a second. So Jared and Melania do not speak?
Not really. I think Ivanka and Melania speak, but from my understanding, it's Jared and Melania basically don't.
Wow.
And they're certainly not right now.
Yeah, I would imagine if he was involved in writing that. Now, what about the Rickrolling? Did you see that?
That did jump out at me. I didn't.
We should just explain. Tell people what Rickrolling is. I mean, because I don't know if people really fully know what that means.
Yeah, it's when you think you're going to get one thing and instead you get Rick Astley. And here she is. She's giving a normal speech, and she comes to the line and says, Donald Trump is never going to give up, and he's never ever going to let you down. I was waiting for the kind of synthesizer drum beat to follow. That was the greatest moment I think I've ever seen at a convention.
God, it would be so awesome to just have. I guess we'll find out ultimately, right? I mean, unless it's Jared who did this, somebody's going to write about it. Right? I mean, it could have been a dare. I mean, there's been times where, I've gone on TV and somebody will text me and say, say meatballs so that my 7-year-old enjoys it. And I try and work meatballs into my political commentary or something like that. I can't help but think maybe that was part of it. Somebody's just I want to see if I can get away with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was put in there on purpose. That's just too rich. Somebody was playing a prank.
So, what? It's so awesome, except for the part that he may end up being president. What about tonight? We've got Tiffany and Donald Jr. speaking. What can you tell us about? Tiffany seemed to be sitting in her own sort of section last night. Do they not get along? What's going on with this? Who is Tiffany?
I think that how well do they get along? I think she was extremely bothered that Chris Christie wasn't picked and felt like the kids kind of railroaded their father into picking this boring Mike Pence guy. And so that's playing out in fun ways, intense ways. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm looking forward to this continuing to play out.
It's a lot of literally palace intrigue.
Yeah, so fun.
And then we're going to hear from somebody from the Trump Winery. I guess that's about how black people have it so easy and white people are oppressed. Is that what they do at the Trump Winery?
You're breaking up again. Say that again.
The Trump Winery. Is that basically where they just complain that black people have it too easy?
Oh, God. Yes, that's insane. Like finding the black people that they know and putting them on stage. It's just, it's so offensive.
All right. So what else? What else can you tell us? I mean, any other thing that we should know about from your vantage point? Paul Ryan has now hit the stage. Has now hit the stage. Right now, as we speak. Oh, we lost him. All right. Well, that was Ryan Grimm, and well, now I guess what we'll do is we'll watch a little bit of Paul Ryan, and then we'll talk about it in real time. Hello, you. I'm Sam Seder. Looking for smart progressive talk that is occasionally amusing? Well, subscribe to our YouTube feed. Subscribe to our podcast. Like us on Facebook. And just generally enjoy us.